BeTheTalk, episode 154, featuring Pragya Agarwal. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Dr. Pragya Agarwal. Pragya, are you ready to talk?
Yes, Nathan, I'm here. Hello.
Dr. Pragya Agarwal is a creative strategist, writer, and social entrepreneur. After a decade working as a senior academic in universities in the UK and USA, she has created 2 successful businesses and founded a social enterprise campaigning for mental health and creativity. Pragya is campaigning to break the stigma surrounding mental health in Asian communities. Pragya Agarwal, welcome to the talk.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you had one of the first European-based TEDx talks. It's TEDx Warwick. It's called How to Develop a Creative Habit. Please take us behind the talk.
So it's all about my journey with and my experiences with creativity and how I kind of rediscovered creativity in my life and how that helped me with my social anxiety and depression. And I go through the journey. It's quite a personal talk actually, because it maps out my journey from India, growing up in India, and then coming to the UK as a single parent and suffering workplace bullying and all that. And I talk a little bit about the science behind creativity and how creativity can actually, what happens in our brains when we are creative, and how it can actually help us to create happiness, and how it can help us build resilience as well. So it's really good for mental well-being. So that's basically the talk about.
Yeah, well, and I'm so glad that you were able to find a creative outlet. What was the link when you discovered, were you already a creative person, or did you kind of discover a link and an outlet to all the stress and social anxiety once you began to create? What was the discovery process like for you, Pragya?
So I did train as an architect, but I studied maths and science. So this is what I talk about in my talk, TEDx talk as well, about how the value of creativity is the creativity isn't really valued that much compared to sciences and maths traditionally when I grew up. And so I went down the traditional route, and I was the academic one. So I chose the academic subjects per se. And I was a senior academic, and I was teaching computer science, and I did geographic information science and spatial cognition and all those things. But creativity kind of ran as a thread through my life, but I never made the link between creativity and mental well-being and how actually it made us feel. But once I was going through this phase of a personal kind of phase of depression and anxiety and all those things, I kind of started making the links. And then being the researcher I am, I started doing a lot of research in how actually what has neuroscience done in terms of creativity and what's happening in our brain, and can creativity actually impact our mental health and well-being? So it was kind of serendipity. It was my own experience. It kind of kept me sane. I realized that when I was being creative, doing something with my hands, I forgot everything. I forgot my anxieties. And then I realized it does create a meditative state, a state of flow, like what meditation is supposed to do. And it does help forget all the worries even just for 5-10 minutes. And the research has shown that there's a domino effect. So when they found that people who are being creative actually are much happier, and that happiness carries forward for another 48 hours at least. So it's not just an immediate effect as well.
So it's immediate, but it also carries on for another up to 2 days. I love that you're bringing in the neuroscience and the research into creativity. What are some of the other findings that you found when you study people and researched what's already out there?
So traditionally, they used to be taught that it's just the left side or the right side of the brain that was being involved in creativity. But then more recent research has found out that actually it's a series of interconnected processes across the brain. So it's a lot of things that are happening in our brain, and actually it can fire new neurons and make new connections as well. And that's why more and more people are realizing the value of creativity for even dementia and Alzheimer's patients as well, because it can help you create new connections where they might not be anymore. And also, all these series of interconnected processes that are happening in your brain, actually, it also, there's research shown that it diminishes the effect of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and actually it creates happy hormones like dopamine and endorphins as well. So, it's also shown, some research has shown that looking at art, for instance, in museums and galleries is akin to being in love, actually, because it creates the same kind of happy hormones.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So
I've never heard that before. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure they have to do more tests. It's kind of the same kind of feeling that it can create in your brain. So there is a mental health association with it. There is a happiness association with it, but it's also actually how your brain is being fired to being more, to make new connections as well. That is really, really important aspect of it as well.
So, I'm going to just try to zoom out, just for a moment and figure out the overview of all the different things that you have your hands in, which is really unique. You've got the design sensibility, you've got that scientific research sensibility, and then you've got this creative sensibility. And then you also have the I'll just call it a humanitarian sensibility where issues of mental health and well-being are very dear and near to your heart because you've been through that yourself. What other facets are in the mix, Pragya? I've counted up 4 so far. What am I missing?
I think it's the new trend. I think it's kind of having a multi-hyphenate portfolio career. I suppose it's finding your passions, and everything links to my why and my why. Why do I do things? And I think it's everything is linked to that. And being a parent, being a mother is really important to me as well. And that kind of impacts on why I want to make a positive change in the world and leave the world a better place. But also I want to give back something to the community. And it really, I realized through my own experience, it's really important to talk about things. I used to be a really private person and not talk about my experiences. But yeah, I'm a writer, and I am trying to write and mobilize change through writing and speaking and through my social enterprise as well. And we create an art program for children as well. So because it's shown that the sooner you expose your children to creativity and develop their creative confidence, it's really important, because a longitudinal study done by NASA showed that even by the age of 10, most children lose that creative confidence that they had at the age of 4. So it's really, really important for them to build that resilience, because creativity is not just about drawing and sketching. And that's what I really want to emphasize in people. It's about making connections, thinking outside the box, and actually having that sense of give it a go kind of a thing, that if one solution fails, you can find the other one. So it actually builds resilience as well.
Yeah, and the odds, it's at odds with the values of creativity, which is trial and error and freedom and wide open boundaries are very much at odds with the way that traditional academics evaluate and measure and pit us off against each other. So I think that's a really powerful value when you start talking about creative confidence. And giving that and helping our children retain that beyond the age of 10. How long has this creative confidence really been a value, and when did you first identify it, either yourself or realize or come across someone else who had identified creative confidence as a value?
I think it's something that's been really important to me, and something that I wrote about last year was my own experience and journey about coming to this point. And when I actually evaluated and thought about it, I realized that resilience was the most important thing that I value in my life. And how do we develop that resilience in our children is really something that's the most important value I would like to give to my children, to be resilient. And so my eldest, I think it's about just values I try to give to her is this message that there's nothing wrong in making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes and you give it another go. And you have to take the first step. Is the first step that's the most difficult thing. You can't achieve anything unless you start the journey. And I think that's really, really important. And I think it's just slowly and gradually that I've come to this conclusion. It's not something that happened like a aha moment one day, but it's something that I just realized slowly and through my own experiences, but just looking at other people and talking to other people, and also coaching and mentoring other creative businesses and people who are starting their creative journeys. I see so often that it's that creative confidence that's really important, putting their products or designs out there and just taking that first step. That's actually the hardest bit.
We've been enjoying this conversation with Dr. Pragya Agarwal. Her talk is called How to Develop a Creative Habit. And in just a moment, we're going to pivot over to the actual talk in the Blitz round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Dr. Pragya Agarwal. It is time for the Blitz round, in which I ask Dr. Pragya a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent branded talk. Pragya, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Here's my first question for you. Were you selected to speak, or did you apply?
I did apply, and then I was selected.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I am a blender. I don't memorize usually.
How did that work for you in the context of this talk?
It was an interesting experience, and it was a very different experience for me because I had to memorize the talk.
Okay. And I mean, would you recommend that to others? If you were to give another TEDx or branded talk, would you approach it the same way in terms of your preparation, or would you do something else?
I think I would go more with my instincts and my natural style. I would have a series of points. I think it's really important because it's such a short talk that you have your message really clear and the thread running through very, very clear. But then you have to follow your natural style, because for me, I found memorizing quite restrictive. That kind of hampered my natural style of speaking somewhat. And if I did it again, I would do things slightly differently. But people are either memorizers or blenders, as you said, or more spontaneous speakers. But I think it's really important to have a skeleton in place before you start talking.
Sure. Pragya, did you have nerves for the talk, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
Both. I was very nervous. Yes. I think because of social anxiety, speaking in front of like almost 1,200 people, it kind of kicked in. I have given so many talks and lectures across the world, but this seemed quite different for some reason. Also, I had a really bad flu and I couldn't speak, and I had such a bad cold and cough as well. So that kind of added to the pressure as well.
You had the flu. You gave a TEDx talk and you had the flu and social anxiety to begin with, which is what the talk's all about, and you had the flu.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's it.
That's amazing. All right. Well, so that was the biggest challenge of your talk. That's a future question that I usually ask. I'm not going to ask that question. What's a tip, a technique, or a tool that helped you?
I started quite broad, I think, and I think that's really important. And also, I did start by listening to a lot of TEDx talks again, and but then I realized, and I was nervous that I had nothing new to say, perhaps, and maybe I'm speaking to other people, they might feel the same, but this is your talk and your personal journey and your personal experience, so you have to own it and you have to talk from the heart. I think that's really important.
For sure. For sure. Here's the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
The painful part that I had to cut out? For
time. You have a limited amount of time. So for most of us, we have to cut it out.
No, I didn't. I didn't have to cut out anything because I did make it to fit into the 18 minutes. And actually, I finished it within 16 minutes. So I must have kind of skipped out a few things, but
Okay.
on stage. But no, I didn't have to cut.
All right. Well, glad to hear it. Last question. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during your talk or right before you went out on stage, besides having the flu and social anxiety? What was the most unexpected thing besides
I've
that?
never spoken being mic'd up, so that was quite interesting to talk. And also, just speaking to I like to engage and see the people when I'm speaking, and speaking to a dark auditorium was quite an interesting, a different experience. But people laughed at the right times and the right places, which was fantastic.
I love it. We've been enjoying the Blitz round with Dr. Pragya Agarwal, and her talk is from TEDx Warwick. It's called How to Develop a Creative Habit. She talked that talk when she had the flu. You want to check this out. It's amazing. And you can see that talk by going over to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com if you don't want to type that into YouTube. As well, we're going to have links to Dr. Agarwal's website so you can connect with her. And in a moment, we will be right back with Dr. Pragya Agarwal for the final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with Pragya Agarwal, and it's time for the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
Prepare, prepare, prepare. Prepare more than you think that you ought to, and speak from your heart. Bring in your own personal experiences and your journey, and just be authentic on stage, I think.
Pragya Agarwal, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your expertise and wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be The Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.